This program is not intended to diagnose, cure, or treat any disease or disorder. The listener is encouraged to seek sound medical advice from their doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner before taking any supplements or starting a new health regimen. And welcome to the Nutrition Heretic Podcast. Here we are, end of March. It's almost over, people. Spring is about to sprung. Wait, hang on. That didn't quite work right. Adrian Hugh, how are you?
I'm great. It's always spring and summer here.
Yeah, I know. This has become a running joke with you and I, so that you can basically.
It's not a joke. I'm serious. It's nice. It's sunny. It's 80 degrees every day. Can't beat it.
Yeah, we just got hit by our last major snowstorm of the season.
So you should hope.
Well, the rest of Canada likes to laugh at Toronto because, we get 2 inches of snow and we're calling out the military to clean the streets.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And Torontonians cannot deal with snow. It's very odd. If you go up 4 hours north of here to the capital, Ottawa, they've got 6-foot snowbanks and they're all walking around going, "Wah!" Could be worse.
Yeah, and New Jersey is kind of like that. New Jersey, New York is kind of like that. D.C. in the last decade or so has been seeing a lot of those 5-foot snow days. So
yeah, they seem pretty wimpy up there in D.C.
Yeah, well, they weren't used to it. They never used to have it. So much for the climate change deniers. It's a changing, and it's a changing rapidly. Apparently, I'm Sammy Davis Jr. channeling.
I was wondering, are you going to pop your glass eye out at some point here?
That was apparently Billy Crystal's big joke with him.
You pop your glass eye out?
He would impersonate him, and then he'd hit him in the back and throw a bottle cap or something. Make it look like his eye popped out.
I love Sammy Davis. He's just awesome.
He was a cool cat.
Yeah, has absolutely nothing to do with this podcast, but
nothing at all. I wanted to bring up stuff that we have touched on in the past, and this is everybody blaming meat for social ills. I know I've talked about everybody blaming fat people for global warming and whatever, Donald Trump. But there's also this thing about meat where everybody blames meat. So I was yet again talking to someone this week. Dude had to be, 700 pounds. And it's that what's funny? Whenever I talk to somebody about someone who's 700-800 pounds, they always ask me, well, how tall is he? And I'm thinking, he's not 17 feet tall. There's no way to hide that. There's no justification for being 700 or 800 pounds. Anyway, so this is the typical scenario that I see with people. They, eat crap. Everything comes out of the freezer section if they even entertain cooking. And when I say cooking, I'm talking about microwaving, not real cooking at home. They are eating lots of fast food, drink pots of coffee every day, smoke 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes, drink a quart of gin, you name it. They do all of this stuff. And then the one day where they decide that they're going to get healthy, they're like, you know what? I'm giving up meat.
You had me nailed up until the quart of gin.
Well, I was actually going to call that Avatar Jim. I thought I was like, that was so close to calling him Jim. So this is the typical scenario, and all I have to do is I look at them and I think to myself, with all of this stuff going on, with the extra weight and the information that we have today, 2 months ago we interviewed Kayla Daniel, who wrote the whole soy story. We talked about the impact of that. This is becoming common knowledge now. People know that paleo diets are working better than the vegan and vegetarian diets for a lot of people. We know that the impact on the environment is not necessarily what we would think, what we're told about meat having this ecological impact where it's totally destroying the earth. Personally, I think the big problem is not only industrial farming, but the fact that we are wasteful. There are parts of the animals that we no longer consume. We do not we throw away so much, whether it's muscle meat, organ meat, bones. I mean, there's so many ways to get nutrition out of these animals, and it's just the way everything is done is so unsustainable that you can't possibly just look at meat as the problem.
Well, my deli still has cow tongue. Cow tongue.
That gives a whole new meaning to Frenching your food, by the way.
Oh, God, does it? I'm so glad I set you up for that one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So, in the spirit of talking about the myths surrounding meat and why meat is not necessarily the evil entity that we have decided that it is in popular culture, we invited Leirre Keith, the author of The Vegetarian Myth, Food Justice and Sustainability. Leirre, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Leirre, one thing I want to say to you is thank you for writing this book. I first read it actually not that long ago, but I had known about the book for a while, and I looked at the title and I'm like, I know all about it. But when I finally decided to read it, I was like, wow, she really goes into a lot of stuff that people are not looking at. And a lot of things obviously parallel the way I've felt for the last 20 years since things have opened up for me as far as what is what and what constitutes good nutrition and why there might be shortcomings in the vegetarian diets. And what I like about the book is that it's not so much a manifesto against vegetarianism, but it's a very pragmatic view of your subtitle, which is Food Justice and Sustainability. So what I wanted to ask you is why you became a vegan. Did you go through the vegetarian stage first?
I never did. I was a vegan. From the day that I started, I was a vegan.
Did the term vegan even exist at the time? Because no, because it is a fairly new term. I'm from the New York area too, and lived in New Jersey for a number of years. And while I knew people who were calling themselves vegetarian but still doing all the fake milks, the fake cheeses, the fake this and that, they just weren't maybe as fanatical or obsessed with eliminating every trace of butter and cream and even eggs from their diets. But what prompted you to become a vegan, and then how long did it take you until you realized that it wasn't working?
I became a vegan when I was 16 years old. And like most people who become vegetarian or vegan, I did it because I met somebody else who was a vegan. It was another teenage girl whose family, all of them were vegans. And so she knew all the arguments about why to do it. And when I sat down and spoke with her, it was very compelling to me. I was somebody who had always cared about the injustices that I saw in the world and was very, very concerned about environmental degradation and cruelty to animals and justice for people, all of those concerns. And when you meet a vegan and you don't have bigger information, they present you with this entire plan. And by doing this one thing, by changing your diet, you can save everything. You can save the planet, you can save the animals, you can save the children. It's all covered. All you have to do is stop eating animal products. And I was utterly convinced. Because, I grew up in a very urban environment. I didn't know where food came from. I had no idea what agriculture was. But I looked at those horrible pictures of those animals being, tortured, which is what factory farming is. I mean, I think we can all agree that it's just horrible. And I was convinced. And then I read all the books, and it all seemed to make sense. And within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that was it. I was a vegan. And so I did it for 20 years. When you take up something like that, you tend to be a fanatical person, and I was. And I had to learn the hard way that we are often wrong about things in life. So it took me 20 years to finally stop. Along the way, I ended up with some permanent health problems from doing this for so long. And that is true for pretty much everyone I know who did this long term. We all ended up with damage.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard because you think you're doing the right thing, and what that means is that this diet could not possibly be hurting you. So it's unthinkable.
Right.
That the diet is the problem. You're just like, I don't know, I randomly have bad luck. Why do I have all these health problems? Can't be the diet.
Right. What's interesting is that we're more ready to blame our genes.
Yeah.
Oh, my grandmother had something like this or what have you. And you brought up something that I always point out to people, which is that the vast majority, and when I say vast majority, well over 90% of the vegans that I've met, don't know where the heck their food is coming from.
Yeah.
There is this. It's very much an urban type thing, and even now suburban, because suburbia in many places does not have very many farms anymore.
Right.
And people really have this disconnect with the cycle of food and how food gets on the plate. So when they get, like you say, they see these pictures and it's this very compelling argument, but it's an argument that only is compelling if you have nothing for your baseline, if you have no real convictions to begin with about why you eat what you eat.
Leirre, I'm probably going to get some hate tweets for this, but the way you described yourself getting into veganism almost sounded, I'm going to say cult, but I'd apply this to just about any religion out there. It almost sounded cult-like, almost like here's a simple answer for all the complicated problems in the world.
Well, and it appeals to, there's two different things here. One is that it appeals to people who do care very deeply. And I always try to emphasize that, the values that underlie this decision, to become a vegan are the correct values. These are people who care very much about compassion and justice, and sustainability. And those are still the values that motivate my life. So you can change, the ideological sort of superstructure, that we build, these ideas that we attach ourselves to and, form our lives. And that's going to shift over time, and it should. We grow, we change, we learn. But that baseline doesn't have to change. You can still be that person that you want to be and not have to be a vegan anymore, because it's, that's what people are terrified of when the diet does fail them, and it will. Because I get these emails every day, and they don't know what to do. It's like, but this is the person I am. And so I always try to tell them, look, that person that you are doesn't have to change. It really doesn't. What has to change is the information that you've got, because you have very partial information up till now. And I can give you more. I can tell you where to go to get the rest of it. And at that point, you're going to make a different decision. But that core set of values that are so important to you, that doesn't ever have to change. But the thing is, when you're a teenager, of course, all of that is so intense, right? When you're 15, 16, everything is so black and white. And, you care so much. And it's all just, you're going to go out there and wave your flag and you're going to get it right. And, nobody knows as much as you know and all that. And so, you take up these kinds of often extreme ideas, like veganism. And I was just primed for it. I just was a sucker, for all of this. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just I had that kind of personality where I was a fanatic. And this just fell right in line with, I was going to change the world. I was, on fire with this. And so, of course, it went right in. There are cult-like elements to this. I can't call it an out-and-out cult because, obviously you can leave and all that. But you definitely will lose friends. If you've been in vegan world and you decide to step out of it, you will get hate mail. People will never speak to you again. I got the saddest email 2 days ago. This young woman, she must be 21, 22. Her entire family, her biological family, was no longer speaking to her because she wasn't going to be a vegan anymore. This is her mom, her dad, her sister. This isn't just like her friends from college. You can make new friends. This is her family.
Right.
It was heartbreaking that her own mother couldn't hear her say, I'm in pain. My body's falling apart. I know this isn't working. And when I eat meat, I feel better. You would think there would be at least some, the parental, impulse, maternal care that would just say, whatever you need, sweetheart, your health comes first. I love you. And just utterly lacking because this ideology gets in the way. And that just breaks my heart.
Right.
And these are people who think they're doing this for all these really great reasons, but they're just hurting other people.
Exactly. That's just it. Well, what's interesting, though, is I'm thinking about the connection between eating disorders.
Yeah.
And you actually describe in the book veganism or vegetarianism as part cult, part eating disorder. And that's something that I've been saying for decades, is that it does bear the markings of both. When we look at people with anorexia, I think most people understand that they don't look in the mirror and see someone who's starving. They see the flesh and they see this totally distorted view of themselves. And I can't help but point out or believe that this is the same thing that we're seeing with people who have done this type of diet for so long, which is that their neurotransmitters are not making the correct connections anymore. And now they're starting to, what would have been the rational response is just not even on the table anymore.
Yeah, so a few facts just to throw out there. If you go to a residential center for anybody, people with eating disorders, what you will find over and over is that about 50% of the women in that unit will identify as vegetarians.
Absolutely.
Now, it's only anywhere from 3, 4, 5% of the general population is vegetarian. So we're talking about an incredibly high percentage of people who take up this diet and this connection with eating disorders. I noticed that anecdotally, when I was a vegan, and I couldn't figure it out. Like, why would this be true? Right. Well, it turns out that, a huge part of this is just biochemical. And the two main nutrients that will trigger this kind of behavior, the eating disordered behavior, is a lack of serotonin, which comes from the amino acid tryptophan. As human beings, it's called an essential amino acid because we cannot produce it. We can only eat it. So if you don't eat tryptophan, you cannot make serotonin. And we all know, serotonin and the SSRIs and its role in depression and keeping you happy. You've got to have tryptophan in order to get any of those feelings. What happens if you don't have enough tryptophan in many people is it will trigger these kinds of behaviors. And this is true in laboratory rats. Yes. This is a horrible thing to do to any animal, but if you withdraw tryptophan from their diets, they will start doing bizarre food hoarding while they are starving.
Wow.
Okay, so you can trigger this. In birds as well, you can have
enough tryptophan, you trip out?
Yeah, basically.
I like to sum things up like that way. Yeah.
Not a good trip at all. And the other element is zinc, that if you don't have enough zinc, the mineral zinc, this also can provoke these kinds of bizarre eating disordered behaviors. So there it is. And I've heard this story over and over. These young women, teenagers, just like me, take up a vegetarian diet or even a vegan diet. They didn't start with an eating disorder. Okay, so the etiology of this is they begin by being vegetarian. 6 months or a year into it, they suddenly have anorexia or bulimia. And I can guarantee you this is a bionutritional problem. It's a mechanical pathway through the brain that it's not working. And it's not necessarily an emotional thing, though I'm sure there are elements of it. But what they've done to themselves is denied themselves tryptophan and zinc because they're vegetarians, and they've ended up in this eating disordered state, just like those laboratory rats. And the best book about this is Julia Ross wrote. She's a if you haven't interviewed her, you should.
Yes, anyway, I was thinking about her.
Fabulous.
The other day.
Yeah. So her book is called The Mood Cure, and she runs a treatment center where she deals with people who have eating disorders, addictions, depression, anxiety, and she treats them just with nutritional supplements and a good basic diet. And she really hammers this home about the eating disorders because she's seen it over and over. And within a few days of eating an appropriate diet, you can often get women to snap out of it, or men too, I'm sure, but it's mostly a female problem. So anyway, you can get people to snap out of it if you can simply get them, to eat enough tryptophan so that you can get them to eat a big juicy steak for a few days in a row. It will often just resolve itself overnight.
Right.
And you can see it's just biochemical. This is the biochemistry of eating disorders, and this is what young women are doing to themselves, thinking that they're somehow saving the world, and it just breaks my heart.
But this is and this is sorry, Adrian.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is where we get, this disconnect with humans, is we forget that we are really, the mind and the body is connected, but we're really big bags of chemicals. And if those chemicals get out of balance, it's going to affect us. And way too often what happens with people who suffer from, and I almost hate to say suffer from depression, because just about, I can't think of anyone out there who hasn't dealt with some form of depression. Or other, behavioral challenge. I hate to say mental illness because it's just the way people perceive it when you say it that way. But you look at it and you realize that the mind is being affected by these different chemicals and these different elements that it's either getting too much of or not getting enough of, and yet the person who's being affected by it doesn't realize it because I'm not sure how to articulate it. Perhaps, Leirre, you can do that for me if you know what the heck I'm trying to say here.
Well, I think you're right. We really are just a series of chemical reactions, and we need certain, stocks to go in, and then certain reactions are, what happens next. And inside all of that, of course, is our mind and our spirit and our emotional reality. And this just feels like what's happening on a day-to-day basis. But in fact, it's all of it has that sort of substrate that's about the chemical inputs, the nutritional inputs. You have to have certain things to keep a stable mood state. And without those things, it all just kind of goes off the rails. And you end up thinking, well, I'm a melancholic person. I'm a depressive person. I just have a lot of anxiety. Well, it turns out, that may be true. But on the other hand, it may be that if you give your brain what it needs, the depression stops. And it really wasn't you. It was, in fact, just a deficit. And I think that this is, the reason we're seeing this kind of almost universal depression. A big part of it is just the terrible nutrition that, has sort of taken over our culture. I mean, we have basically a cultural eating disorder at this point. But at least in the United States, we've been told for 40 years now to eat this low-fat, high-carb diet, and it wrecked us. It wrecked our physical health. It wrecked our emotional health. You cannot have a healthy brain, and healthy emotions eating that kind of diet. It just isn't sufficient for the human template.
Right. And that's something very interesting that I've noticed as well, which is that a lot of people, the vast majority, once again, of vegans, even the ones who are trying to eat truly plant-based and picking things from their backyards like you did in when you would wake up in the middle of the night and
the slugs.
the slugs off. But they're, even those people who are eating actually vegetables as 90+% of their diet, their bodies are not really that different, and in many cases worse than the person eating McDonald's every day.
At least if I'm not telling anyone to eat McDonald's, certainly, but at least if you're eating McDonald's, you're going to get some amino acids.
Exactly.
Eating broccoli is just, you're not. It's just, there's no way your brain can function on that.
Right. Right. So could you go over, you talked about the health problems that will haunt you for the rest of your days. I'm paraphrasing here, but what can you demonstrate for us? Tell us what some of those things are.
Right. So we actually have a concept that's called the diseases of civilization. And this is because the pattern has been noted over and over and over again that across history, when human societies take up agriculture as a way of life, what happens very quickly is a series of diseases pop up in the archaeological record. And these are diseases that have never been seen before. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a corresponding diseases of hunter-gatherers because they're actually eating the food we evolved to eat, and they tend to have perfect health generation after generation. The moment people take up agriculture and start eating these plant-heavy diets, they shrink 6 inches and their teeth fall out. So, and then there's a whole slew of diseases that, just never been seen before. And that constellation of diseases is, what we call syndrome X, metabolic syndrome. So that's going to include diabetes, problems with weight, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and then you get all the chronic inflammatory diseases, autoimmune diseases, and, from there on, that's pretty much what happens. People just start falling apart right and left. So you're going to get diabetes and blood sugar issues. And this is because the diet is simply too heavy in sugar. And if it makes you happy to call it complex carbohydrate, go right ahead. What I will tell you is that at the end of the day, every last one of those long-chain carbohydrates is broken down into a simple sugar in your intestines. That's the only way it crosses the brush border and gets into your bloodstream is if it's a simple sugar. And that's what your intestines will do with it. And now you've got way too much blood sugar. And from there, everything just falls to pieces because you have to have this huge surge of insulin to take care of it, and it's not actually insulin's main job. This is a fallback position for an emergency situation, and we've been doing that to ourselves 3 times a day now for 10,000 years. So you end up with these various disease states, but that's really what it goes back to is eating these grain-based, plant-based diets. It just does not meet the needs of the the human template nutritionally.
Right. So what are some of the things? I think you talked about back pain in your book.
Yeah. So I ended up with degenerative disc disease. So the joints in my spine just fell apart. That's very common. You're going to find people with joint and bone problems from this diet.
Right. And you said the teeth falling out. I don't know if that was...
Oh, yeah. No, I mean that quite literally. And I know any number of young vegans, and I'm talking about very young people, 20, 21 years old, who, started to be vegan at my age, and all of a sudden they go to the dentist and they have 20 cavities overnight.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, I can tell you exactly what happened. You don't have enough fat to actually absorb the minerals, because your body will not absorb minerals without fat. A lot of people don't know that. There's no point in eating minerals if you're not going to eat some saturated fat with it.
Absolutely.
So that's problem number one. Problem number two is the diet simply doesn't have enough minerals. So even if you're eating all the fat in the world, there's nothing to absorb. I mean, there's not enough minerals in it. Meat is dense with minerals, bones especially, and across the world, the healthiest people eat things like they eat the bone marrow and then they make bone broth because they know that you have to have minerals, to stay healthy for a good long life and a good long skeleton to take you through that life. So you're going to end up with, bone problems, teeth problems, joint problems. You're going to end up with blood sugar problems. You're going to end up with cardiovascular problems. You're going to end up with autoimmune diseases, and this is what grains trigger, particularly gluten.
Absolutely.
I ended up with an autoimmune disease. I have Hashimoto's. Thank you, vegan diet. Here we are. And then you're going to end up with reproductive issues. And this is because, people don't understand. Cholesterol has been so vilified across the culture, but cholesterol is this incredibly life-affirming substance. It does so many good things for you. And one of them is that it's the mother hormone. All of your hormones in your body are made from cholesterol. So if you're not eating cholesterol, you're not getting any hormones. And this includes, of course, your sex hormones. Right. So estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, we all need some of that stuff. Whether you're a man or a woman, you need, some variety of that is what you need. And you just can't make it. There are no building blocks if you have no cholesterol to end up with estrogen or testosterone. And this is why a lot of women on these super low-fat diets, vegan diets, have tremendous fertility problems. You stop menstruating, you can't get pregnant, you don't understand why. It certainly affects their male partners as well. And that's what it is. It's just plain old cholesterol. You have to have it. It tastes yummy for a reason. We're meant to have it.
Absolutely.
It's how you get to a juicy life, Eat your fat, people.
Exactly. And I wrote a small book called Frenching Your Food, and it's all about our relationship with food. And the fact that if we don't, there's our body did not tell us that things with fat and salt are bad for us, or that they taste good for no reason. There is a biological need, but what people don't realize is that the tendency to eat sugar is actually a fairly recent one. Particularly in the amounts that we consume it, like you talked about the so-called complex carbohydrates and so on. These are all sugars, and we do not. Even if you watch a small baby, unless they were weaned onto sugar immediately, most of them they know when to stop.
Right.
If a child has been nourished properly, they will know when to stop eating. They'll refuse it. But you see parents in restaurants or your own family, and they're like, "Come on, don't you want just a taste of pie or ice cream?" And they're really working it up as if that's a reward for the child. So we tend to use, and this really irks me, is that we use the word treat to define something that we know will destroy the body.
Right.
That's not a treat to me. A treat is something that is rare, something that comes up once in a while, but sugar has become so ubiquitous in our society that there is no treat anymore in having a slice of chocolate cake.
Well, a couple. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, as a parent of a 6-year-old, I try to cover that off by also including other things as treats, like cantaloupe slices and apple slices and different kinds of natural foods, along with that piece of chocolate from Halloween.
Yeah, now the thing about sugar is that for many, many people, not everybody, but for a lot of us, it when they do these experiments, it triggers the same pleasure centers to the same degree that cocaine does in the brain. So it can be incredibly addictive.
Yes.
To a lot of people. And in our evolutionary history, we would not have had access to super sweet things for most of the year. There might have been one season when there was some fruit, but let's remember that domesticated fruits are tremendously sweeter than their undomesticated counterparts.
Yep.
So what we would have come across in the wild was mostly bitter. It's nowhere near as sweet as, we've coaxed these plants to get sweeter for us.
Right.
Because, not good for us, but it's something a lot of us crave. But it wouldn't have been there, in our evolutionary history, and it certainly wouldn't have been there every day. And the other problem is that our body has such a tremendous need for fat, the human body, that if we don't give it enough fat, there's a fallback plan to make it.
Yes.
And what our bodies use to make fat, if we don't eat it, is sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Our body, you can take sugar and actually transform it into the fat that your body needs to run on. So the problem when you eat these low-fat diets is your body says, all right, fine, you're not going to give me fat, then we're going to make fat instead. And that means you're going to crave sugar. And you're not going to stop craving that sugar until I get enough fat. And so you crave sugar. And the number of people I know who were just absolute sugar addicts as vegans, and then the moment we start eating an appropriate diet, the cravings just evaporate within a week or two because you're actually eating enough fat. And it's like, wow, I can go all day. I can go till 4 o'clock in the afternoon and not even think about sugar.
Yeah.
I don't need it because I had a breakfast of eggs and bacon. Like, I gave my body what it wanted, and that, tremendous craving. This is not like an emotional failing, a character failing. You're craving that sugar for a reason. It's called starvation.
Yes.
You might not look like you're starving, but your body doesn't have the nutrients it needs. That's why that signal is just impossible to override. It's like your body's telling you something, and it's that you don't have appropriate fats in your diet.
Right. And one message that I've been trying to get into people's heads since we started this podcast is the fact that our bodies are not betraying us. These are very good signals. We need to understand what these signals mean and to stop thinking that our body's always trying to break us down. It will break us down if we don't give it the right nutrients. But so often we're trying to use this false scientific view, which when I say false, I'm making air quotes, but I'm saying that because it's kind of it's what the food processing companies want us to believe about what our bodies need. And so we're trying to override that intellectually, what our body is actually craving, with this intellectual construct of I'm a healthy eater. This is what I want to eat. I really want to eat this stuff. And Leirre, you even mentioned in your book that you choked down some really nasty stuff.
I sure did on a regular basis.
And I think we all have been there where we want to do the right thing and we eat some piece of leather and we decide that it tastes delicious because we want to believe that we, in our heart of hearts, inherently choose the healthier path.
Can I tell you a little anecdote? Because this just happened this week. I had a young woman I was emailing with, and she's so confused about all of this, and I completely understand. We get all this conflicting information, and she was saying, I try to have a healthy breakfast. I eat oatmeal for breakfast, and then I'm so good, and then I just eat soup for lunch and salad, and then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's just brownies for the rest of the day, and then I cry because I'm gaining weight and I hate myself, and why am I so weak? And I'm just like, sweetheart, this is predictable. Yeah. I'm going to give you a different food plan. Just try this once. And she's still like really upset about vegetarian, not vegetarian. I said, just forget the meat for now. You can talk about that later. Here's a breakfast. I want you to eat 2 eggs and an avocado. I know you can do this as a vegetarian. Eat that, and then see how the day goes. And she writes me back. This is the first day. She writes back, and she's like, I couldn't believe it. I didn't crave brownies once.
Yeah.
Well, of course you didn't. Yep. You had fat and protein for breakfast. Absolutely. That's all your body was telling you. It was like, you didn't give me any fat. Well, then you're going to crave sugar all afternoon.
Yeah.
One way or another, I'm getting that fat. And so that was it. And she just couldn't, and of course, her mood was stable, and she was happy, in fact. And it was like, you've just proved exactly what I'm trying to tell you. So you take the information and use it or not. It's your life. But you ran the experiment, and it worked.
I had a woman several years ago who was trying to get pregnant, and we were sitting in the car, and she was, I had this craving, and I ate an avocado. I can't believe I ate the whole thing. Oh my God, it's so fattening. And she's going on and on and on. And, because she knew everything, and I've studied nutrition and but she didn't study it formally, but she read the freebie at the health food store. And so she's going on about how it's so fattening. But then she tells me that she has to eat every 2 hours.
Course.
Oh, well, if I don't eat every 2 hours, I'm just going to collapse. I need to eat every 2 hours. We're supposed to eat every 2 hours because the doctor said you're supposed to eat every 2 hours. And she's going on and on with her 2-hour regimen. And I said, you know what? Add some butter to your meals. Mm-hmm. Just put and not like a little smear, put a good
eat some butter.
But, like mean it. If you're going to eat butter, mean it. Okay. So, and I made her switch to regular milk. We're not even getting into grass fed now, right? But I was like,
fat.
Yeah, just get the fat in there. And a week later, I see her, and she's like, "Since you told me that, I have not I can go between meals without having to eat all the time." And a month later, she told me that her daughter, who had growth problems, had not grown in, I think, 2 years. She went to the doctor, and suddenly she sprouted up.
Oh, that just breaks your heart, doesn't it?
I know.
That poor kid.
Yeah. What was interesting was the girl, her mother never had her diagnosed, but she was clearly on some kind of spectrum. She did not have the cognitive skills of other children her age. And you could gradually see her coming out of it. Just a little bit more social, a little bit more verbal. It was like night and day, I mean, it was a huge step. And what's also interesting is that she went on to get pregnant almost immediately after this, and the first child was riddled with allergies at birth.
Yep.
But the second one, she still had allergies because this woman still knew everything, and she only followed but so much. But she had maybe 7 allergies compared to the other one. She was literally on a diet of turkey and green beans. That was the mom's diet during breastfeeding, because she was so allergic to everything. But this other one actually fared better, and even her infant pictures looked more cognizant than the other one did at 4 years old.
I find this whole discussion fascinating because it seems that, and I'm not, versed well enough to say when this started, but there has been several centuries of humans suppressing, and institutionalizing the suppression of what our bodies tell us. In other words, your mind rules your body. So, religion and culture and every other thing saying, don't listen to the body. Tell the body what to do because this is what's best. And it sounds as if this is part of the big problem is that we don't want to listen to what our bodies are telling us. We want to have this myth, this idea, this crazy idea that just because we're intelligent, sentient beings, we can control what our body needs.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And coming from someone who studies energy psychology and energy medicine, it's what I find really interesting is that all of the big names in this, Gary Craig, Donna Eden, they do work with verbalizing what you want your body to do. Every single one of them will admit that you need animal foods in your body to get your body to cooperate with some of these statements that you're trying to infuse your body with. So it really, we cannot override our evolution. And what I also find interesting is that we seem to not understand that for ourselves. But you try to give somebody's dog or cat chocolate and they will flip out because it's not part of their diet. They can't live with it, but somehow we make excuses why we're able to change our diet and not that our pets and other animals can't thrive when changing their diets. So anyway, we're going to have to wrap up soon, but Leirre, I wanted to ask you, and this comes from one of our listeners, Deborah Yaffe. She was actually also on our show. She loves your book, by the way, just as much as I do. She wanted to know that since you've written the book, have there been any changes to your ideas, beliefs, or the information that you have, and has the vegan hate towards you calmed down a bit?
The vegan hate never goes away. It's just something I live with, and I have I don't know if this is true, but I heard this was a Persian proverb, and it goes, "If I am patient, the body of my enemy will be carried past my door." Ooh. And I say that half in joke, and I also say that just very ironically, because all of these people, eventually the rubber's going to hit the road, the diet will fail them, and they are going to need the information in my book. And there is forgiveness in my heart. They send me all kinds of horrible hate mail. It's very hard sometimes to go out in public and be me. But, I understand that half of this is just the biochemistry of what they're doing to themselves. Right. It's impossible.
Is it true that you did a book signing in California and someone threw a pepper pie in your face?
Yeah, I was assaulted by 3 vegans. They slammed shit into my head. Yeah, it was pretty. You can watch it on YouTube. 80,000.
Oh,
people.
it's on YouTube.
Yeah, you can. They, of course, they put it. It was the whole point was to humiliate me publicly and get it up there. So I didn't back down. You're not going to silence me. This is reality, and we need to face it together. As a species. And too many people are suffering for this. But this is again where you get into those cult-like elements. Like, I don't know if it's just because my mother's a librarian, but to me, if I don't like a book, I take it back to the library. I don't assault people because I don't agree with them. I mean, it's crazy. This is like not how a pluralistic democracy is supposed to work. And they make all these claims to peace and to, being compassionate people, but this is how they behave.
What's interesting here is that you may be the living proof of the old saying, the best revenge is living well.
Yeah, it's like that. And there's an odd sense that I feel sorry for all of them because the day is going to come when they realize they were completely wrong. They were caught up in really intense, ideology that pitted them against reality. And they're going to be sorry. And it's fine. If they want to apologize, I will accept it because I never assaulted people, but I remember having such intense feelings about all of this. Mm-hmm. And you really can't, it's really hard to control it when you're not eating the right nutrition. I mean, it's all the studies show, it's like you're anywhere from 2 to 4 times as likely to have a mental illness problem if you eat a vegetarian diet. And this is where it goes, and up to and including things like, you're more likely to be murdered. I mean, it's just insane, but that's the facts,
Absolutely, yes.
There's a lot of violence that swirls around this. And we really need to be talking about that, especially as, teenagers and stuff get into this. And they're not the most balanced people to start with. And, your brain's not even finished building itself at that point when you're a teenager. And I did it when I was 16, and I know I'll never be the same. I mean, it's just, there's damage that you can't undo. But back to her question, though, I would say that I have not changed my mind about anything particularly. I've only refined it, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Like, I've learned a lot more about how to restore grasslands and how important that is, and how that has to happen with ruminants. So I'm a huge believer in Alan Savory's work, for instance. I really think it's the only hope that our planet has is to repair the grasslands. And this adds a lot of pressure, I think, to get this word out and to make people try to engage with these ideas, because I really think the only way we're going to get the carbon out of the sky and back into the ground is through the grasslands, through the prairies. That's what they do. And the only way you have a healthy grassland is with ruminants. So we need to understand what's been destroyed and how to repair it, because the bison and the prairie grasses can still do this. It's not too late, but we need to understand what's been done and how to undo it. And that can be done. There are people with plans. They understand how this works, and it's very hopeful work and very beautiful work. And I would say I have more refinements on, where to go from here as a species and as a planet. But time is running out for our planet. We need to be taking this pretty seriously.
Leirre, I've never met you before, and this is so. I feel the need to say this, that this is not a platitude, but I find you to be an incredibly passionate and incredibly courageous individual, and I only wish that I had half your courage and strength.
Oh, well, thank you. But you all are doing a show here. You're getting information out to people that need it, and it takes all of us. Like I'm nobody if people don't get the ideas out there as well. I mean, we're doing this together. Are
you working on anything new right now aside from your book?
Yeah, I have a book that I'm writing with 2 of my friends about some of these environmental issues. So it's good. It's good stuff.
Wow. Thank you so much for everything that you've done and everything that you do, Leirre, and we need more courage and more passion in this world, sincere passion. Not some of that pseudo passion we're seeing currently from the American election, but
and actually that was a question I have to ask you. When you watch I don't know, Drumpf.
I love that.
Do you ever wonder what the heck is he eating?
I don't actually worry that much about his diet. I think he's honestly just a sociopath, and there's nothing you can do with those people. Really. And I'm not being silly. I honestly think he's just a narcissistic sociopath, and there's not much. It's just, you just can't give them a platform. You just can't give them. And the problem with our culture is, of course, is that we reward these people. So, of course, he's risen to the top. We've got a completely wrong reward system here. But I will say an interesting thing. You may not know this. When Jeb Bush was running, I guess he's dropped out now, but he knew he had to lose weight to look better on television. And you know what he did? He did a paleo diet.
Yes, I did hear about that.
Yeah. He lost like 40 pounds. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Actually, that's what I wanted to ask you before we completely wrap up. Is what does your diet look like now? Like what did you have for breakfast and lunch today?
Sure. So I would say that what I eat is a paleo diet, but I do very well with dairy products, and I know most paleo people are kind of iffy on the dairy, but I do great on dairy, and I also have access to really fabulous raw milk where I live. So it's easy. And we actually have a cheese factory in this tiny little town where I live, and they have a whole line of cheeses that are just local grass-based farms. So I can get like the best cheese literally in the world. I'm not exaggerating. Our little cheese factory went to a cheese competition in Devon, England, which is like Dairy Central, right?
Yeah.
And brought home a blue ribbon.
Whoa.
So we actually have the best cheese in the world. I can say that right here in little tiny Crescent City, California. And I can just go get it for $2 a pound whenever I want it. So it doesn't get any better.
$2 a pound?
Yes, $2 a pound. They'll have it on sale. And it's like, it's a little bit out of date or something. Who cares? There it is. It's perfectly fresh. So
when we get off of this call, I'm going to get the name of that, and I'm going to find out where they sell it, because my husband's in San Francisco right now.
Oh, you might be able to find some. Yeah. No, it's great stuff.
He's gonna pack his suitcase full of it.
That's right. That's right. Well, so I eat obviously a lot of grass-fed, bison and beef, and I have also very good chicken eggs. I can have access to duck eggs, and then whatever vegetables. Living on the coast of California means I can get really nice greens all year round. Things like broccoli and kale and whatever. All the cole crops, they last all year. It's never really goes out here because we don't get any snow, so you can get those kinds of things. So that's pretty much my diet is meat, eggs, good veggies, and then the very good dairy products. And I just really have to stay away from sugar and sweets permanently. I pretty well wrecked my insulin receptors with that vegan stuff, so I have to eat very low carb or I get pretty sick pretty quickly. But that's all right. You shouldn't be eating that stuff anyway. My big downfall is chocolate. I do love chocolate, so every once in a while I let myself have a treat, and then we go back to the straight and narrow. But it's the way it is.
when most of your diet is real food, you can have these little peccadillos, and it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's not the consequences that you would have dealt with. Yeah. I'm not even sure. Like 15 years ago? How long has it been since you changed?
1999 was the year that it changed. Yeah. So 16, 17 years now. Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. And you still haven't undone so much of that.
No, some of this is permanent, and this is what I try to tell young people. It's like you push it too far, there's no coming back. Right. Especially when they already come to me or I hear them talking, they've got the joint pain. You're like, those joints, it's almost impossible to heal them. You're already in the red zone here, people. Yeah. You've got to listen to some other information. It's no good.
And it is funny how they will say like, I feel great until you catch them not trying to defend the diet. Then you hear all the stuff that's actually happening.
It's constant stomach aches, the migraine headaches, the skin is so dry it hurts, their knees hurt, their ankles hurt all the time, they don't know why, semi-constant diarrhea, they're not menstruating anymore, like on and on and on. You're like, oh, sweetheart, I can tell you. Right. Like all of this is just predictable on that diet.
Right. Okay, well, Leirre Keith, thank you so much for being on our show again. Her book is The Vegetarian Myth, Food, Justice, and Sustainability. You can find her at leirrekeith.com. And how long do you think it'll be till your next book is coming out?
Hopefully next year sometime. We're working pretty hard. Yeah.
Awesome.
And if you're wondering how to spell... Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes, sorry.
You got to spell it.
If you're wondering how to spell Leirre, it's Liere.
Yes, and as I always say, with an L. Pierre with an L, you got it. And if you can't remember that, listener, what you do is go to Google and just type in Vegetarian Myth. There is only one book with that title, and you will find me.
Oh, that works.
Yep, and it's easier than my name.
If you want to find us, it's really easy. Just go to nutritionheretic.com. You can like us on our Facebook page. We would love if you would do that. Our Facebook page is facebook.com nutritionheretic. On Twitter, we are NutriHeretic. And you can contact us through the website or through Facebook or even Twitter. If you have an idea for a show or you would like to be a guest, we'd love to talk to you. And please don't forget to rate the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. Leirre, once again, incredible courage and just very insightful for me today. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being here. My co-host, Adrian, anything you'd like to say before we...
Leirre's my hero. From the moment I picked up that book, I was like, this woman knows she's going places. She knows what she's talking about, and she's not backing down. And like you said, just incredible courage. Thank you so much for doing everything that you do to get the word out and to make people live better lives, help people to live better lives.
Well, thank you both. 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 Well, thank you both.